Hi everyone, my name is Dave and welcome to Extra Credit, a video series where we take an unscripted look at topics related to local history and exploring that history. All right, so before we get started with today's video, this is just a reminder to please visit my website. There's a link at the end of the video that you can check out, or there's also a link in the description. Also remember to follow me on social media. So you can follow me on Facebook, you can follow me on Twitter, you can follow me on Instagram. Also a reminder to click the subscribe button, and that basically will mean that you will get content before anybody else. Sometimes there's a bit of a lag between when content gets uploaded on YouTube and when it actually makes it out to things like social media. So make sure you subscribe to this channel. All right, so today's topic, ladies and gentlemen, is all about something that I have been sort of intimately familiar with for a long period of time, and it's a very, very integral part of my historical explorations, which is photography. So basically, I was sitting down last night and I was trying to think a little bit about how long I've been sort of doing this and how long I've been kind of interested in photography, and was having a kind of a difficult time trying to think of the exact timeline. So I started doing these railway explorations back in 1994, and I can remember kind of that first year going out and basically having my mom's little sort of point and shoot camera. It was a little compact Ricoh camera, and basically using that to take pictures of the grade. And remember, back 1994, that was in the film days. And so essentially what you're doing is you're taking pictures and then you're developing those pictures. And I would basically carry with me a piece of map, a photocopy of a topographic map. And I can remember having like basically a pencil with me and trying to mark it kind of where I took the photograph. And then once I would get the pictures developed, basically writing on the back of the picture, using the military grid coordinates to kind of write on the back of the picture kind of where the picture was taken, and then basically putting them all into kind of a photo album and kind of moving forward from there. So it was maybe probably before that I started having a little bit of an interest in photography, and so last night when I was kind of thinking this all through, I believe it was the next year, I believe it was 1995, that I actually bought my first kind of real camera, if you want to call it that. And so basically I was using kind of the experience that my older brother had. And so my first camera, my first sort of, more than just sort of a point and shoot camera, was a Minolta X-700. Basically it was a manual focus camera. It was actually a great camera, and I wish I had it to actually show it to you, other than basically showing you a picture of it. I'll explain that in a minute here, kind of what happened to that. But basically that's kind of where my interest in photography sort of took off. And so basically now I had a camera that, wasn't obviously a professional high-end camera, but I mean, kind of mid-grade prosumer, maybe if you want to call it that. And so, I mean, the quality of the pictures that I was taking sort of grew quite dramatically. And I was going out not just necessarily taking railway or historical pictures. I was actually going out and taking photographs that I was trying to I love sort of landscapes, I love waterfalls, and so I was going out and sort of taking those types of pictures with this camera. Eventually, and I can't remember the time frames of this, I did eventually buy a second camera. So I bought a Minolta X7, and the reason why I bought another Minolta one was obviously the interchangeability of the lenses that I had, right? So you could basically swap one lens and the other. And so the question becomes is, well, why did I need two cameras? Why two cameras, Dave? Well, essentially back during the film days, if you were basically taking general purpose type of pictures, and some of you can kind of understand what I'm talking about if you're a little bit older than sort of the younger generation, most people were basically taking general pictures. They're using film, okay? They're just using ordinary negative film, and then you're making prints off of that. But people who were basically professionals and people who were taking high-end pictures, what they were using is they were using slide film. And the advantage of slide film was that with the regular print film, essentially what you were doing was you're basically getting a negative, right? And if you've seen sort of negatives, and I'll put it up on the screen for those of you who are not familiar with a negative. But basically then you're kind of rendering an image from that. The advantage with the slide film is that basically when you're shooting a slide, you're creating a positive image of what you're seeing. So it's almost like kind of what you see, is what you get. Type of thing. And so the colors, the saturation, all of those types of things were remarkably better than you would see with print film. And, that was something I kind of heard about and read about. And so basically I had two cameras because I would load one with print film, and then I would load one with slide film. And so basically what I was doing is I was using like the X7 with the print film, and then I had the X700, which is a little bit higher end camera with the slide film. And so again, I was using the slides to take some of the, the good quality nature shots and landscapes that I was doing, but also I was kind of snapping some slides because, at the time, if you were kind of doing any type of presentation back then, it wasn't like you threw something into, Google Slides or Microsoft PowerPoint, right? I mean, you had to kind of get, the slide carousel, right? And you put the slides in, and you kind of show the pictures up. So that's what I was kind of doing with that. Now, unfortunately, I as I mentioned, I don't have either of those cameras. What ended up happening was quite a number of years ago. Later on, I actually got a job working in a photography store. So I ended up getting a job in Thunder Bay working at one of the Black's stores. So the Black Photo Corporation at the time was one of the biggest photography retailers, companies in Canada, right? I mean, they sold all kinds of camera gear, and basically, people were bringing their film there to get developed, right? So that was kind of a natural kind of transition for me. And so basically I began working there. And eventually what ended up happening was I ended up kind of changing my cameras and actually moving into, from the manual focus world into the autofocus world, still using film. And so basically what I ended up doing was I ended up buying one, and I believe I had two. You're just trying to think back here, 20 something years. I basically purchased a Nikon camera, a Nikon SLR camera. Now the question becomes is why Nikon? I mean, one of the things that you sort of eventually start to hear as you kind of worked in kind of the business is a lot of the kind of the pro end photographers. There's always kind of this battle between the Nikon people and the Canon people. And so the reason why I got into Nikon was basically because a few of the people that I work with, a few of my work colleagues were Nikon people. And so basically that's how I got into using the Nikon system. And so one of my other colleagues actually asked to borrow my manual focus cameras, basically saying, hey, you're not using these anymore. Can I borrow them? And this person ended up kind of moving away with the cameras, and I never got them back. So that's the story of my old manual focus cameras. They disappeared. So as I said, eventually what ended up happening was I basically purchased a couple of Nikon F70s, which again were kind of mid-level cameras. They're not kind of basic models, but they're not kind of the higher end cameras. They're basically kind of mid sort of range, again, sort of prosumer, somebody who's kind of a bit of an amateur, but wants kind of some of the higher end sort of features. They were great, and I started sort of buying some of the, the lenses and things like that. And so, you had the standard lens, and then you want kind of a wide angle lens. And eventually I purchased one of the things we were able to do at Black's, and one of the sort of advantages, and I don't know if it was one of the reasons why I ended up working there, was you were able to buy certain things, like, so for example, camera gear, you're actually able to buy it directly from Nikon at cost, right? So basically what Black's was paying for the gear, I was able to purchase at that price. And probably one of my biggest purchases is, and I still have the lens, I wish I would have brought it, was I bought, at the time it was a great lens. It was at 80 to 200 lens, a 2.8. So it's a pretty hefty lens. Ended up costing me at the time probably about $1,000. Again, not one of the high-end ones, like, if you're not familiar with photography, you see the guys at the sporting events with the huge long 500 millimeter zooms. I mean, you're talking about $10,000 for some of those lenses. But again, at the time, we're talking about 20 years ago, or a little bit more. I mean, it was more than $1,000. I think it was about $1,200, right? So it was a very expensive piece of equipment. And again, still have it, still works amazingly well. But eventually what ended up happening is I stopped working. I started teaching full time as I left Blacks. And then eventually what ended up happening was I ended up getting a newer camera. This one I still have. And so this was actually bought for me by my, at the time, my fiance. So when we got married, I bought her a ring. And so, not that I asked for it or whatever, but she bought me a little kind of engagement gift. So she bought me a sort of a higher end, Nikon camera. So this is a Nikon F80. So again, just kind of a step up from the F70. Big advantage is had a little bit of a battery grip on the bottom. Didn't have a release button, but basically gave you a little bit more battery power than standard. There's actually, I haven't touched this camera in a long time. There's actually still a roll of film that's inside the camera. So this camera actually has a wide angle lens. It has a 28 millimeter lens on it. Great little camera. The only interesting thing, I believe this was 2001 when I got this camera. This was right on the cusp of when we sort of entered the digital age. And so I used this for a few years. Again, took some really, really great pictures with it. But eventually what happened was digital came out. And eventually what ended up happening was a few years after I got this camera, probably about 5 years after I got that camera, I ended up getting my first kind of digital SLR. And so I ended up with a Nikon D70. And again, the reason for sticking with Nikon was that basically I could use all of the same lenses and things like that. Essentially, if you look at a lot of digital SLRs today, single lens reflex cameras, basically they break down into two groups. Like the sort of the more lower end ones have what's called a DX sensor. So they have a little bit slightly different, slightly smaller sensor, a digital frame sensor. And then some of the higher ones have what's called an FX sensor, basically a full frame sensor. And so what the difference is that, so traditionally, so with this camera here, it's got a 28 millimeter lens. Okay. So if I was to take this 28 millimeter lens and put it on a DX camera, it's not 28 millimeters anymore. It would actually be less. Okay. And so again, it's all interchangeable. So for example, if I, on a standard full frame camera like this, 50 millimeters is always regarded as kind of what your eye sees. Right. So the equivalent in a DX sensor would be 35 millimeter. Right. So if you've got a 35 millimeter, basically it would be giving you kind of the same sort of viewpoint. So I used that D70 for a bunch of years, and then eventually I upgraded. And so I purchased this camera in 2010. So this is a D90. And so again, kind of mid-range, okay, not again, kind of the top of the end, but kind of mid-range kind of camera. Did get the grip on the bottom, so it does have the side release for it. Again, now the camera itself is 11 years old, so kind of, in the grand scheme of things, kind of considered kind of sort of obsolete technology, if you want to call it that. Again, the lenses are all interchangeable. One of the big things that I would recommend if you're doing any type of the historical stuff that I do, and this came on a lot of trips. I actually dropped it one time. It was in my camera bag, and I dropped it. And I think on here, yeah, there's actually still a crack. I went to go, if you watch the episode where I was showing you my gear, and there's a camera bag that I attached to the front of my vest, and it slipped while I was hooking it up, and it fell, and I actually cracked the grip, and I actually damaged this lens. So this lens here is a very wide angle lens. It's actually not a Nikon one. It's a Takina lens, and so it's a 12 to 24 millimeter lens. Off the top of my head, I can't remember what the DX equivalent to that is. I think it's 18 to 30 or 18 to 36 or something like that. But again, very, very wide angle and very important for when you're doing any type of landscape work, if you're taking landscape photography, or if you're doing historical stuff like I am, right? And you need to sort of photograph things and you want to try to get as wide of an angle as possible. Right? So again, this camera has been many different places and seen a lot of things and taken a bazillion pictures. I still use it from time to time. Just what I found is that in more recent years, especially since I've gotten into a lot of the biking, I find that the SLR is a bit bulky and it's a little bit unwieldy, especially when I'm on my bike. I just find it very difficult to kind of, because I'm stopping all the time and I'm trying to take pictures and, where do you put it on you that it's not kind of in the way, because you're biking and your legs are kind of pumping up and down, and then it's, if you have it in a bag and it's hanging off your shoulder, then it's kind of bouncing around. That tactical vest that I use, and if I put the camera in the bag on the front, same thing, it's bouncing off of my legs. So it's in the way. And so what's happened in the last number of years is, as I've kind of left the SLR behind, and what I've done is I've actually morphed into using my phone. What a lot of people do. And basically there's two reasons for that. The first reason is basically convenience. The fact that your phone, I wish I could show you my phone, but when I do these videos, I actually use my phone to record the video. I have a lot of video recording devices, but not one that's kind of ideal for doing these types of videos. So my phone is an Apple iPhone 11. So it's one of the newer models, right? So it's kind of the previous year's model. Okay, so I guess I got it in the fall of 2019. And so it's very compact. I don't have the Max model. I have the regular iPhone 11, so not with the 3 cameras, with the 2. But it tends to fit very well in my hiking gear. It's compact, it's out of the way. So that is number one, the big advantage. Maybe there's actually 3 reasons. The second reason is because my SLR camera is older, there's 2 kind of disadvantages with it. First of all, you have to buy an external adapter for it to do any type of geotagging. So when I'm out doing these explorations and I'm taking pictures with my phone, it's geotagging everything. So basically it's recording not only all of the camera information, but it's recording all of the geographical information, right? So basically I can have all the GPS coordinates of where this is taken. So when I go back and take a look at something, I know exactly where it's been. And then kind of along those lines is my SLR now is again getting very obsolete and very old. The camera technology has evolved quite greatly. So it's obviously better to take SLR pictures, and I've certainly seen pictures that people have taken with newer SLRs, and the color saturation, the sharpness, the detail that I get out of my phone is just as good as what I get out of my SLR, and how it rends the colors is the big difference, right? A lot of modern cameras and things like that, newer ones will have things like HDR, high dynamic range, and so the pictures that they take, just especially when you get the big ones with the contrast, and you get that a lot when you're doing, these railway explorations or the historical sites, and sometimes you can't control the lighting, right? You're trying to take a picture of something and you can't really change the composition, right? You can't move to another spot, or you can't really wait for the right time of day, and so you have to kind of go with what you got, and with things like high dynamic range, and when it sort of sandwiches all of those pictures together and kind of gives you kind of the best image that it can, that is a huge advantage, right? So the pictures that I'm getting out of my phone are just as good, if not better, than I'm getting out of my SLR. So now the question becomes well, why haven't I upgraded, and why haven't I bought a new camera? Well, a lot of it has to do with the fact that, where do you want to spend your money, right? Replacing this D90 that I have, at the time, I think I spent probably about $1,200-$1,300 just for the body of the camera. And obviously, if I'm going to be getting something, I'm looking at something comparable. So again, you're looking in that, $1,200, $1,300, $1,400 range just for the body. And again, how much am I, when I'm doing a lot of these historical explorations, how much am I going to be using that, or how much more convenient it is to use my phone? So basically, I mean, it just boils down to, you know, a cost thing. And so I've kind of, you know, just kind of kept around this thing, and maybe at some point I will upgrade the camera. In the last couple of years, I've bought a new video device. So I bought a GoPro, and then my newest purchase, which actually does have photo function, and I'm getting better at it, and it's a little bit of a different approach because this is not sort of traditional photography. So this is my newest toy. I just purchased this about a month and a bit ago. So this is a drone. This is a DJI Mavic Air 2. And so this is kind of a little bit more of their, I guess this is kind of last year's model. Again, economics, right? You know, you're just waiting for the price to come down a little bit. And so there is a newer model that just sort of came out this year. It's got a little bit better sensor. So this has got a, this one has a 2/3 inch sensor, or a 1/2 inch one. I think the newer model has a 1 inch sensor. So obviously, you know, its ability to take pictures and videos and things like that are going to be a little bit better than this one. But I'm excited to try out some of the photo capabilities and use this in some places to grab some photos. And maybe you will see that on, you know, certainly you'll see that on the videos, right? This is the main reason why I bought this, was obviously to take video of some of my explorations, particularly in places that are kind of hard to get into, or getting a different angle. So places like the Blend River Viaduct, you know, where you're basically not up on the actual structure itself. And but again, we'll be taking pictures of that. So again, this is kind of the end of the episode. And so what I've done is tried to give you a little sort of history of my you know, my background with photography, and you know, sort of some of the tools that I've used on the explorations, and some of our recommendations kind of going forward. So again, you know, talking a little bit about, you know, the need for wide angle lenses if you're using an SLR. Again, phones have become a great option for recording all this information, basically because of the you know, the compactness of the phone. Basically, the photo quality is fantastic. Geotagging, all of these kinds of things, and especially if you like kind of sharing that information, you know, your photos and things like that are going up to the cloud, and you can easily share it in between devices and things like that. So anyway, hopefully you've enjoyed this. Hopefully you've enjoyed this episode and all of the information that I've given to you. Again, please make sure that you check out my website and check out my social media pages. Stay tuned for future episodes that are coming along. So again, I have them all sort of planned out. But if you have any suggestions in terms of things that I should be taking a look at related to kind of local history, or related to exploring that history, so gear, devices, anything like that, don't hesitate to let me know, or leave your questions or suggestions in the comments below. Anyway, so I look forward to the next episode coming along. We're going to try shooting that one outside. A little bit different take on that episode, and there's a reason why we're going to be doing that one outside, but you'll have to kind of wait and see. So anyway, take care, everyone.